Welcome to the Lazy CEO Podcast, where Jim Schleckser, author of Great CEOs Are Lazy and founder of the CEO Project, features compelling experts and topics for CEOs of mid to large-size companies. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome, everybody, to another Lazy CEO podcast. My name is Jim Schleckser. I am your host and the founder of the CEO Project. Today, we've got, I think, a really fascinating guest. I would almost call him the Tony Robbins of entrepreneurs. And for those of you that know Tony Robbins, he's all about mental state and how you think, and what you visualize is what you create. But my guest, JV Crum, has really thoughtfully brought that forward into the business area and built a company called Conscious Millionaire. And he's going to walk us today through some of the elements of that and how we think about performance and how we change our mental state to elevate our level of performance and our sense of abundance. So, JV, welcome. So glad to have you.
Well, thank you, Jim. I'm really excited to be here. And of course, performance and connecting with your mind and the higher state of consciousness and all the information in that field and utilizing it to be more successful is where I focus, especially with entrepreneurs that want the dual outcome of creating wealth and they want to create a better humanity. They want to bring the two together.
Yeah. And JV and I talked maybe a week or so ago on his podcast, and I think those two are inextricably linked, right? If you do a lot of great things for people, you make the world a better place, wealth works out, actually. It's hard to put goodness into the world and not have some of it come back to you, which is the nature of what we do for a living. But how did you come to this view, JV? Give us a little bit of your background that got you to this view of, mind performance connection.
Yeah, well, it actually, I'm going to do some milestones then. So I grew up in a little country town and 200 to 300 people, and nobody had any money. So by the age of 5, I'd figured out this didn't work well for me. So I announced to my parents and the whole town knocking on doors that I would grow up and be a millionaire. So well, fast forward to 25, and there was a firm called E.F. Hutton. He said, we earn money the old-fashioned way we work for. Well, there was no internet. I actually had to make money. So by 25, I had the 4-story home, the Mercedes. I was a millionaire. And within 3 months, I had a total meltdown one day. I was on the water. The home was on the water, looking out at sailboats. And I realized that I'd figured out how to make money, and my life had no meaning whatsoever.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so then I spent the next portion of my life and ultimately sold the companies, lived at a Buddhist monastery, lived at Esalen, and went on that search to meaning and found that I did have a purpose. That's the purpose I'm living now. And then I have to credit Gay Hendricks. I had him on the show, and then I very quickly had him on a few more times, and that was 2020. And I read his book, The Big Leap. So I want to recommend that book. And what I realized is that he said most people get to the 3rd of 4 levels. And that's where I was. I was really a great coach, but I'm good at numbers. I'm good at systems. I'm good at mindset. I'm good at strategy. And then he said, but there's one level above that. That's your genius. And when I did his exercises, I realized all my life, that's why I went over at 5. I decided to be a millionaire. Got there at 25 and decided I wanted something else. Everything had been a mindset shift. And it had been a mindset shift of also becoming more conscious as a human being about why am I here and how can I contribute to the world. I grew up in a family we didn't have money, but my parents every day told me the world's supposed to be a better place because you're here. And they lived that. They lived that very much. They lived that. And so I brought consciousness and performance together. That's really where I focus in helping entrepreneurs, professionals, CEOs, executives, that whole world to perform at a level that most people don't even know how to tap into. That's what we're going to talk about today. It goes way beyond the conventional high performer to what I call ultra high performer.
Awesome. No, that's great. And I think a lot of us go through that search for meaning. I think you might have gotten it there earlier than many of us do. That's your typical.
Well, it helped.
Your typical midlife. It's your midlife crisis, right? Typically, right?
I got to my midlife crisis pretty early.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl in high school, and actually had the good fortune when I was 21. I was in LA, read in the newspaper he was coming to a synagogue, and I got myself down there, and I actually got to hear him in person, which was a real treat to hear that. So kind of it that I was getting clear that money in and of itself was pretty empty. Now I have to say, at 25, I didn't want to give the house back because this was a lot better than I grew up.
Yeah.
But I also knew I was missing something. But I think it's really about becoming an ultra high performer, that you're tapping into your mind, you're tapping into the field of higher consciousness, that really that's where Steve Jobs got the iPhone. That's where Beethoven got the Fifth Symphony. That's where Mahatma Gandhi got, nonviolent resistance. These concepts, these visionary ideas, and the next 30 years are going to be the most disruptive period in entrepreneurship we've ever had. And all of that really comes out of that field and higher levels of mind that go beyond beliefs. And I'll describe that as we go along.
Yeah, well, actually, I think that's a great tee up for us to talk about it. You sort of painted the vision that there's this higher level of ultra high level of performance where incredible breakthroughs can occur.
Right.
And it's about where we are that gets us to that place, right? So why don't you help us understand how, if I'm a normal high performer, how do I get myself? What do I need to think or do differently to get to that place?
And that's a great place to start, Jim, because that's where I start. The people who come to me who want to work with me are already successful, but they have a sense there's more, and they know they want it. They may not know what the more is, but if they come to me and you want more, I'll take you there. So let's talk. And I assume you're going to put up the model at some point. There are 7 levels to it, but let me kind of tee that up. This took a while to figure out. There's so much misinformation in literature and psychology and performance and flow. They don't clearly define what I'm going to tell you. This thing here called the brain, that's the brain. But there's an energy field around you that is actually your mind. Your brain connects to your mind, and your mind is connected to that field of infinite consciousness. And I'm going to call consciousness, to make it simple, energy. And what is energy? Energy is packets of information. Again, that's where Steve Jobs tapped into this. What I do is I realized every mindset book I've ever read, I've read a lot. Everybody here has read Think and Go Rich, probably James As a Man, think of, Waddles, The Science of Getting Rich. They're all talking about the lower level of mind, as if it's all of mind, and that's the belief level. But there's a level of mind above that that goes beyond the conceptual beliefs. I've created formulas to help people tap into that, and then all of a sudden, they start getting bigger visions, they get different strategies, they get different execution patterns, they hire different people because they realize they have some of the wrong people, and they build their business at a rapid pace.
Got it. Okay, so I get the model of brain, mind, infinite energy, and the ability to tap into that, which is very Buddhist, by the way. So help us. How do I get there? Give me the roadmap.
It helps that I lived in a Buddhist monastery.
I know, exactly. Sure, but no, give me the roadmap. What do I do? You got me all excited. What do I do?
Yeah. So the first level, are you going to show that model?
We'll put it in the show notes.
Okay. So there's 7 levels, and I'm just going to describe it to you. The first level is infinite abundance. So let me talk about 2 realities that are co-occurring right now on this planet. 95% plus, emphasis on plus, are living in a conventional reality that is founded on these beliefs, and it's limitation and scarcity. Limitation and scarcity.
Absolutely. By the way, I think there's a fundamental breakdown in the universe, right?
Yeah,
are you an abundant mentality, or are you a scarcity mentality? Very fundamental.
And most people are here. That's where business books are written. My MBA was all about that. That's where competition comes from. That's where, you sit around, you're not going to be able to find the right people. I find it interesting that some companies just naturally attract people, and other companies are in scarcity and can't find the right team members, right?
Yeah.
Because the right team members are there for both of them. Okay, so that's level 1. And in my model, and that's high performer. That's what most books on high performance, that's where they take you, is you're still struggling to compete even at your highest level. Obviously, there's much more beyond that, and it doesn't matter what level of success you have. Just ask yourself, what would it look like 2, 3, 5, 10, 100 times bigger than I have right now? And do you want to take the hard path there, which is constantly pushing against this internal sense of limitation? Or would you like to come over here to this emerging reality I call conscious reality? It's not founded in beliefs. It's founded in experience. And the profound fundamental experience in conscious reality, which is the rest of this entire pyramid, is the experience of limitless, of infinite abundance. That is the true nature that you are now going to choose to live in. And I assure you, the moment you live there, all of a sudden ideas come to you. All of a sudden, opportunities come to you. All of a sudden, insights come to you. All of a sudden, you see a bigger vision for your business, or you have a meeting with somebody, like we're having another meeting this afternoon, you and I, and you go, oh, what could we do together? You know, all of a sudden, those come to you. So that's the first level. And then I take people through 7 more levels. And just in the interest of time, I'll just briefly describe each level and tell you that at every level, I have formulas I've developed that work 100% of the time to not just shift your mindset, but much more important, to tap in and unlock your mind at higher levels and then connect you to that infinite field of consciousness, which is all the information in the universes, and allow you to start utilizing it to play at what I call an ultra high performance level. So higher identity, what I have found is every person I work with now, I work with identity, that's one of the quickest ways to make a shift in someone's performance is I work with here's the formula, I'll give it to you. Who must, and I'll come back to that word must, I become in order to achieve X, which is an outcome, in Y time. So now you can plug it in, and then you start moving through infinite levels of that mind. It's not just a one unlock, it's keep unlocking, right? Now, the word must is critical. It's in every formula I've created here. A lot of people say, and I listen to people's words. I have 9 years of NLP, so I spent a lot of time listening to people's word choice. And people would say, I'd like to, I'd love to, I have a goal. I don't, by the way, my clients are not allowed to have any goals. They're only allowed to have commitments, because I found that people achieve commitments a lot more than they achieve goals. Right? Because goals are something you hope will happen. A commitment is something you've put your whole self on the line and you said, my mind, my body, my heart, my spirit, all of me is going to focus on this, and we're going to make this happen. Really, what you're going to do is manifest it from your mind and this field of limitless consciousness. So on identity, the must is when you decide that X and Y, the outcome and the time frame, who must you become in order to achieve that? And when people start thinking from that standpoint, now so many people are set up, and it's very natural that people will be set up to get to a no, but to make it hard to get to a yes. As soon as you start shifting your identity, you start getting to higher yeses. And what I am really in the business of is helping people have more possibilities, and then develop the strategy and execution to go out there and get them. That's the real business I'm in. So the next one is possibility. The formula would be what must be possible in order for me to achieve X and Y time. Now, that possibility could be a possibility inside me, or the possibility may be identifying things like, let's say you want to acquire more clients. That's a typical one. That those clients actually exist, that there's a pathway for you to connecting with them, that what must be possible is you have a message that will resonate with them. You know, what must be possible is that you know how to close them. So when you start going through that, you go, oh, well, this is actually very practical. Is that I start understanding, but then you go back and you play, because it's iterative. Well, who must I become in order to act on that possibility? Because all of these interact with each other. So there's 7 factors, but it's really 49 because they're all interacting with each other. Deep flow is probably the most favorite topic of mine. I've been living in flow for so long. I started unraveling it 30 to 40 years ago using NLP, because I realized, we'll just go to regular flow, that some days I woke up and everything happened like magic. Everything. It was a magical day. And guess what? Some days I woke up and it was a day from hell. Nothing worked out. And knowing NLP, I said, well, there must be patterns of thought, of energy that are going on when I'm totally in flow, and synchronicity is a natural outcome of that. And there must be different patterns. So I studied myself and I got it down to patterns that I knew worked with me. And then, of course, I started teaching it to other people, and it turned out the patterns worked with them. So regular flow, what I was teaching then was coming out of conventional reality, because that was also where I was living. When I started living over here, I realized, wait, there's more distinctions to flow because I'm experiencing something different. Here's 3 distinctions. Just write them down and contemplate them. I'm going to give you an opportunity, if you want to get in touch with me, to have a 30-minute session, which I'll work on these exact things. We'll choose 1 or 2 of them and the outcome that you have. But in flow, in conventional flow, which is what most people are writing about, because I've read most of their books, you're talking about getting into flow. But over here, what I'm teaching in this model, you become flow. It's an important distinction. Over here, people talk about, I got a download, right? That's a popular thing people will say. Over here, your experience is that you are, in fact, the download. So the identity is shifting to this conscious state. And over here, people talk about, I'm connected to higher consciousness, that field where all these ideas come from. And over here, you become that field expressing through yourself. Those are very important distinctions. And in deep flow, I teach people how to do that. Visionary is related to purpose. Every great leader has tapped into that visionary mind and consciousness. And I would even say visionary is very related today to disruption, because most of the great things that are going to happen in business in the next 30 years are going to come from visionary disruptions. Now the question is, visionary also relates to purpose. Are those coming out of your heart and soul? Is it the reason you're on the planet, bringing it into a higher vision for your business that results in an impact to create that vision in other people by bringing it forth to your clients? And then that model of business, which is this comes with ultra high performance, is people pay you for the impact you're making.
Right.
Well, by golly, isn't that what they're paying for anyway? So why not make an impact that uplifts them intentionally to a higher state so that they too can be performing? You see, I'm not just out on a mission to help a few people become ultra high performers. I want the whole planet to get here so that we can all live at our highest levels and all make our greatest impacts and also create our greatest wealth. I believe only in the scarcity model cannot everyone be wealthy. I believe in this model, everybody can be wealthy, and there are resources that will allow that to happen. It's just a shift in how you see yourself and possibility. And then opportunity, the moment, now you can see as you begin to play with this, what must happen for me to tap into my highest opportunities to achieve X and Y time? And all of a sudden, you start not just seeing opportunities. I want to point out, some of those opportunities were already around you, you just didn't see them. That's obvious.
Right.
But when you're in this higher level of your mind and consciousness, you are also creating, with all that energy field, new opportunities that didn't exist. And if you go look at quantum physics, we all know that if you look at the particle, at the wave, that's going to affect what happens with that wave, right? So your mind is literally the higher, and I'll say vibrationally even, because at the higher levels of your mind, you're tapping into higher potential. And that potential is already there. But when you tap into it and you start utilizing that potential, now you're creating opportunities that didn't exist before. And now you can really disrupt this planet, which I think is a great thing. I'm totally in the boat. I've had this conversation with so many people just this last week. There's all these disruptions coming. You have two choices. You can try to hold on to the past, good luck, or you can embrace the waves that are coming, and all of a sudden new possibilities and now occur. And now you reach what I call this awakened state. So the awakened state actually isn't a destination. It's an infinite level of experiencing greater and greater and greater awakeness, greater and greater opportunities, greater visionaries, greater flow, greater possibilities, this greater identity. And now you're on a path where there's infinite destinations you can visit, because you're living in the place where you can maximize your wealth, your impact, and your fulfillment. And I think that's one of the areas a lot of entrepreneurs, especially I work with people in tech, tech sometimes can get soulless because people are so focused on the disruption, right? And riding the wave. But folks, that's what I discovered at 25. If you have the house and the Mercedes and the trips to Europe and all this, but you're not happy, what was the point? In the end, wasn't it to be more fulfilled and have a happier life? Isn't that the real thing that we all want to experience as human beings? It's just some of us want to create wealth and change the world in the process.
Interesting. There's as I'm listening to you, there's a couple of threads that intersect with what you're doing. The whole conscientious capitalism movement is very aligned with this in terms of create impact, which creates wealth, but also a number of Eastern religions on this higher state of consciousness all would tie into it as well. The sort of infinite possibilities and the state of flow and oneness with the universe. And that ties to a couple of different ones, actually. So interesting where you got through a very different methodology to some very similar conclusions, which I always find gives me comfort in my conclusions. When I say other people got here through different pathways, but we're more or less in the same place. I find that very interesting.
Well, if you look at Conscious Millionaire and we just break it down.
Now, by the way, have you written the book yet, JV? Because if you haven't, you need to do that.
Yes, actually, my book is first book's Conscious Millionaire: Grow Your Business by Making a Difference.
There you go.
And I apologize, I didn't send you my media kit. It was in #1 in 34 categories and became the #1 book on Amazon, all of Amazon.
Nice.
With 50,000 downloads in 3 days. The current book I'm working on is Conscious Millionaire: The Secret to Ultra-High Performance, which is exactly this model that we were talking about.
When are we going to be able to buy that, by the way?
That'll be a 2024 event.
Okay. Yeah. I sound like your editor now, right? So
it's all written in my mind.
Of course.
It's already there. I've got it outlined. And chapter 2 will be a deep exploration of what I talked about, of the two realities that are coexisting and this emergent reality of consciousness that's now appearing. It's like the 100 monkeys. It starts appearing all over the planet. And then you don't have to have but 1-2% of the planet playing this consciousness game that we're talking about. And all of a sudden, it starts emerging everywhere.
Right. Interesting. What percentage of people do you think have achieved this level of flow in your experience?
Yeah, my experience, because I have a lot of friends who, we associate because we play the same kind of games. Honestly, I think we're in the 1 to 2% range right now.
Okay.
Yep. That most people are not here, but I think in 30 years, I think this will be the norm. Because once it starts unfolding as it's doing, it's kind of like when I lived in Boulder in 1999, that was the #1 Whole Foods in the world. And Whole Foods was still for granola people, right? And I went to Whole Foods and I bought only organic and everything. And now Whole Foods' biggest competition is every other chain that's conventional, because they all have organic sections. They all have Amy's Pizza. They all have the same products as Whole Foods. And that's a testament to their success. And I think that's what's happening as we move forward. more and more businesses, when I started this 20 years ago, it was kind of a rare idea. But now there are more and more people, like we work with B Corps, we work, finding purpose-driven entrepreneurs. There are a lot of people who like this model, and it's because they feel in their heart that they don't want to just feel like they got the Lamborghini and then what? It's great to get the Lamborghini if that's what you want. But if your heart isn't involved and you don't feel like the world's any better, I can guarantee you what will happen, because I experienced it at 25. You'll feel empty.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked before in our prior conversation about Bob Buford and halftime and sort of how you go down that path as well. He very similar epiphany that he went through. So when give us an example of somebody you've been able to bring through these stages, because I have to say, I think the gateway here is this abundance versus scarcity. And I've met people that come, I'm a fairly abundant guy in terms of my view of the universe. I've met people that are scarcity mentality, and I find it very hard to bring them over. I'm going to say they're on the dark side to the force, right?
They're conventional instead of conscious.
Well, but many times it comes from their upbringing, their family, their experiences, their mental state. And it's very hard to undo, 20, 30, 40 years of life experience that caused me to be like this. One conversation with JV Crum is not going to turn me into an abundance mentality guy, probably. Unless you've got some magic that we don't know about.
It's a transformation. Everything I do is transformational, and it really is people being open to the shift, and that often comes from the world they're living in isn't giving them everything they want.
I think that's key.
And they're realizing there's something more. And like I said, they may not know what that is. But every person I end up working with, they know there's something more and they know they want it. And what I do is I take them on a journey of discovering that and transforming themselves. So once somebody starts to transform, it's interesting. I had a client yesterday I met with, and we're shifting what we do in our sessions because he's had this amazing experience in business. And so he got like kind of like the jackpot, let's say, 7 months into coaching with me. And he did 2 sessions where all I did was thank me. And he says, it's because you opened me. This is what he said. And this is an important part. He took down the guardrails, right? And opened to receive. That's an important piece of this. So there are a lot of pieces to this. And when somebody starts opening and they start receiving, things can happen very rapidly. I'm a very big proponent. I tell people all the time, don't set any small outcomes. They're not worth setting.
Right.
Only set big outcomes. They're more interesting. You'll be more motivated, and you'll attract a bigger team that wants to work on those bigger outcomes because they're more exciting. And then they can happen actually faster than the small outcomes. So once somebody kind of gets into, as I put it, the deeper you go in flow and the more time you spend in that flow experience, the more synchronicity that will happen. And synchronicity are those events everybody listening has had them. You've had them throughout your life where you meet that person you weren't expecting to meet and you marry them. Or you meet that person and they became your best client, or you do a business deal, or you learn about something and that becomes your next vacation. Those are all synchronicities. The more you're in flow and the deeper you go, the more synchronicities that will occur. And I can tell you in my book, Conscious Millionaire, Grow Your Business by Making a Difference, I rearranged the chapters, they're 14, so many times in writing that book. And I finally got it right in that chapter 6 is my strategic planning chapter. And I have a form, and you can utilize it for a day or a week or a month or a quarter. Right now, as we do this, I'm doing the 4th quarter with all of my clients and groups. You can do it for a year. Sunday, I'm doing my quarter, but I'm also looking at next year together. And then chapter 7 is on flow. And the first paragraph of chapter 7 is one of the more important paragraphs in my book, and it's 320 pages long. So, and it says, doing all this strategic planning is great, And by the way, you can throw it all away when you get in flow, and you may find that you can accomplish that outcome that you thought was 90 days in a day because you just meet the right person with the right combination of possibilities, and it's done. So both are powerful. I consistently find the deeper flow approach to be faster.
Interesting. You know, I in my book I wrote about Alice in Wonderland. Alice is walking down the path, meets the Cheshire Cat, and she doesn't know where she's going. He says, "Well, Cheshire Cat, which path should I take?" And the Cheshire Cat asks, "Well, where it depends. Where are you going?" And she says, "Well, I don't really know." And he goes, "Well, then it doesn't matter what path you take." And I think that's where the idea of a strategic plan interfaces with the idea of law of attraction, which you call synchronicities, but I would call law of attraction. That if I know exactly what I want, when it appears, and it will, I'll know that's it. That's what I'm looking for, and now I can take advantage of it. So the plan and this law of attraction or synchronicities, they work together. So you do need to do the plan so you know when you see it, you go, that's what I'm after, and you can do something about it.
Perfect example. So when I was selling companies, I spent a year and a half planning a worldwide trip. And I read actually all these Lonely Planets because it had great information. So I started off and I took a 4-month, 30,000-mile road trip in my Grand Cherokee. And I went to Canada, and I went to every province, including Newfoundland and Labrador, every major city. And I had read about this Buddhist monastery. It's the only Tibetan Buddhist monastery in North America called Gampo Abbey. That's in Nova Scotia. Now, this is interesting. I'm driving along, and it's the Cabot Trail. It's about 167 kilometers. It's fall. I'm driving along this 2-lane road. Had I been looking left, I would have missed this. My entire life would have been different. I was looking right, and about 2 feet off the ground was this wooden sign, not even very big, and it said Gampo Abbey, and I went, that's that Buddhist monastery. And there was a dirt road, which JV took. And I went down the dirt road. And I arrived at Gampo Abbey the exact moment they opened, only once a week for 2 hours for visitors. And JV visited for 2 hours. And I took all kinds of pamphlets. And when I left that night, I was out in, a remote area. So you could just find, in Canada, there are a lot of mom and pop motels out in remote areas. So I found this very basic motel, and I'm reading through everything. And I said, they have a retreat. I'm going.
Yep.
And I called them the next day, and they promptly told me I was not qualified. I had never meditated. I wasn't Buddhist. I didn't meet any of the qualifications. So as I go across to the West Coast, I continue to call them. And then I ended up in San Francisco for 10 days. I'll tell you 2 quick stories there. It was turned out the 10th time I'd called them. So I was in my hotel room. I called them, and they said, we had a meeting about you yesterday. And we decided if you called again, you were supposed to come, and therefore you can come. So I went to that. That same day, I called Esalen because I had been in, I have a master's in clinical psych. I studied Gestalt, which is really what a lot of Esalen's based on. I got into it for 3 days. And then Thanksgiving was coming up. So I'd gone to my concierge and I said, I'm here in San Francisco. I want to go to the best place. I want to have an amazing time because it's all booked. No. So he booked me at the St. Francis, but turned out the St. Francis was doing it in the cafe and people were in jeans. And I said, no, that's not what I want. And immediately I knew that the top place was at the top of the Mark
Hopkins.
Yep. And into my mind, because I get a lot here, it was to go there, and I got a phrase to tell the maitre d'. I'm the gentleman you've been waiting for, the one without the reservation. I get there, I go all the way up to the top. People are like all angry in the waiting area because they're like an hour behind, because this is like 4 p.m. now. I go up to the maitre d' and I say that exact phrase. And she says, give me a minute. And then she comes back and she says, will you come with me? So I went to the bar that's in the corner, and there are 4 stools, and it had the best view in the place. And she says, if we set up a place setting here, could you eat here? think I could manage to do that. I stayed for 4 hours, became best friends with the bartender, met everybody waiting who were having drinks, waiting for theirs. And I had an amazing time. That's synchronicity. But if I hadn't been in flow, none of that would have happened. And if I hadn't gone to the Buddhist monastery, maybe Conscious Millionaire never would have come into my mind.
Wow. Well, on that note, this was a fascinating conversation. I think we could go for hours, but unfortunately we can't. JV, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your wisdom. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, and I know you've made a kind offer of a, free introductory session, if somebody wants
Sure.
to, how would they get a hold of you for that?
If you're an entrepreneur and you know there's something more and you'd like to play a lot bigger, I'll just make it simple for you. I will give you a 30-minute session in which I'm going to take and help you clarify where do you want to go next, and then identify one of these minds to activate and help you activate that so that on the spot, you begin to get new insights of what's possible for you.
Nice.
And all you got to do is just go to consciousmillionaire.com/meet with JV. MEET, meet with JV. There's a calendar there. Just choose 30-minute time and sign up.
Love it. Awesome. Well, JV, thank you so much for the time. This was phenomenal. I know a lot of people enjoy listening to it, and we will probably have you on again at some point in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. And I look forward to us talking this afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. And, my blessings, I just say, go play as big as you want, because bigger is better than smaller.
Amen.
This podcast is brought to you by the CEO Project. At the CEO Project, we work with CEOs to help them grow their business. And our members represent billions of dollars of revenue and profit. And frankly, amongst all of us, we've probably made every mistake in the book, including some you haven't made yet. So if you want to learn from the experience of a bunch of really seasoned CEOs, we're a great place to hang out. In this podcast, what you're going to hear are some of those ideas, concepts, and things that are just going to help you on your journey. If you want to find out more, reach out to us at theceoproject.com, or you can contact me personally at jim@theceoproject.com. Happy listening.
Thanks for listening to the Lazy CEO podcast. We'll see you next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes, and check out our website, www.theceoproject.com.